Hi, welcome to Goldie Show. I have Dr. Morrow with me, a man of different talents, many talents, as I should say. You're not only a professor, you're an author, a scholar, you're a traveler, and you have your PhD. Hello, Dr. Morrow.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm quite well, thank you.
It's a great honor to have you. I know you're a busy man.
Well, thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Okay. I have a couple questions, and hopefully we'll get to know you much better.
Yes, by all means.
First of all, let's start with, where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Canada.
Okay.
I was born in Montreal, Quebec.
Okay.
And so I lived in Quebec. I also lived in Ontario. And I've lived for, over a decade here in the United States.
So when you first came from Canada to the United States, and what inspired you to come here? Why not stay in Canada?
Well, employment.
Employment.
I mean, I had completed my PhD and I was looking for a job as an assistant professor. And, the reality is most of the jobs are here in the U.S. And so there's this brain drain from Canada and other countries. So scholars and professors tend to gravitate around the U.S. So I came here for employment reasons.
So first, where you started?
I started at Park University, which is in Parkville, Missouri. It's just outside of Kansas City.
Okay.
So I taught at the university there for 3 years. I taught at Northern State University in South Dakota for 4 years. I worked for a year at Eastern New Mexico University. And then I worked for, I moved here to Fort Wayne.
Fort Wayne?
Yes. To Fort Wayne, Ivy Tech Community College.
What made you choose Ivy Tech over other institutions and colleges?
Well, civilization, actually. Yes, and when I tell this to people, they think it's quite funny. Many universities in the United States are in small towns.
Okay.
They have these college towns, population 12,000. In South Dakota, very, very small town. The closest big city, and by big city, I mean 100,000, was Sioux Falls, and that was like 3.5 hours away. A real city, Minneapolis, that was over 6 hours. So that was very difficult for me. I like nature, absolutely, but I don't like complete and total isolation. So I like to get the best of both worlds, and that's something that was available to me here in Fort Wayne.
And you're married?
Yes, I'm married.
How many kids?
I have 2 children.
Wonderful. And do you speak different languages also?
Yes, I mean I grew up speaking French, which is my maternal language,
Okay.
and English as well. And when I was a teenager, I learned Spanish. I went to Spain. My father speaks Spanish as well. My sister speaks Spanish. So I actually grew up in a trilingual family. And then I pursued, at graduate school, I had to learn other languages too. Mm-hmm. So, yes, I studied Italian. So I have reading comprehension of Italian and other Romance languages. And I studied Arabic.
Wow.
I also lived in Morocco and I studied at different universities and institutes. So it's definitely a multilingual household. And so my children will go from one language to the other.
Which is good.
Yes, absolutely. It's really...
from what I know, that you're an author too.
Yes.
And you write books.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of books and how many books have you written?
Well, most of my books are scholarly books. I'm an
Okay.
academic, I'm a professor. Most of them fall into the fields of Hispanic studies, Native studies, and Islamic studies.
Okay.
The first book I published was Arabic Islam and the Allah Lexicon, How Language Shapes Our Concept of God. And that was a co-authored book. I contributed some chapters, and my colleagues, Barbara Castleton, who's actually teaching in Seattle right now, and another colleague from Argentina, Luis Alberto Vitor, they contributed chapters. So we were 3 working on that project. There was Amerindian elements in the poetry of Rubén Darío, Amerindian elements in the poetry of Ernesto Cardenal. I authored those books on my own. There was Religion and Revolution, Spiritual and Political Islam in Ernesto Cardenal. That's a monograph authored by myself, one author. Anthologies of my articles, Islamic Insights, Writings and Reviews. What else? The Encyclopedia of Islamic Herbalism took me about 20 years.
Wow.
Research and writing, that was my work. There was another book on global English and Arabic. So we were a team of scholars. I've got a chapter in that one. History of reading. I provided the chapter on the history of reading in the Arabic world. So, I mean, there are my projects, and then there are ones that I edit or that I translate, and then there are like team projects. Right now, I have a follow-up book. It's a follow-up to the Covenants of the Prophet Muhammad with the Christians of the world, which has created quite a buzz in the scholarly community and which is at the root of this movement, the Covenants Initiative.
Really?
It's received dozens of positive reviews by scholars, and I've lectured about it in Canada, in Washington, in France, in Belgium, in
How
the
did you get the
Netherlands,
message out?
in England. Grassroots. It's a grassroots movement, people connecting with people on the internet and through Facebook and social networking and Twitter. There's a lot of people out there who would like, to do something good, right?
Do you
To
have
have a voice.
obstacles?
Obviously, there are obstacles, in terms of, right? I don't have an enormous amount of money, right, available to me, nor do my supporters and followers. But we believe that if we're going to make any change, it's not going to be top down. It's going to be bottom up. It's going to be from the people. If we're trying to protect minorities in the Muslim world, as far as we're concerned, no progress is going to be made by the leaders of those countries, okay? They have the power, they have the money, and so on. And if you look at the situation, it's catastrophic. So we're not counting on the political leaders. We're not counting on most of the religious leaders. We are counting on everyday, ordinary Muslims who are fed up with this tiny minority of extremists who are giving all Muslims a bad name. So there's a follow-up volume to that, called Critical Studies on the Covenants of the Prophet. I'm the editor-in-chief, and there are about a dozen leading scholars from around the world who are contributing to that volume. So that's, and of course there was Islamic Images and Ideas, another one that I edited with scholars from all over the world. I've always been a very creative person. I always have to be busy. I always have a project, and often many projects at the same time. So right now I'm managing about a dozen different projects.
Wow.
Books that I'm working on, books that I'm editing, and so I direct teams of scholars from around the world.
And you're a professor, of course, that's a busy life too.
Yes, I'm a full professor of foreign languages at Ivy Tech Community College, Northeast. So as you can see, I'm a very, very busy man.
Yeah, with being busy.
Yes.
You do have time, right, for your family?
Absolutely. I spend an enormous amount of time, believe it or not, with my family. It's not just a question of time, it's a question of quality time.
That's right.
Right? I mean, there are some fathers who'll spend, 8 hours with their kids and there's no connection or anything. They're just lying in front of the television, drinking beer and eating chips and gaining weight. Yes, but no, I teach my children all kinds of things.
And your wife also supports you for what you do?
Yes, my wife is a successful businesswoman. She's a psychotherapist, and she runs her own business. She's extremely busy, and so she helps and supports me, and I help and support her. I think we make an excellent team. Quite often she travels with me, and the children travel with me. As a professor, I often have the summer off, so that could be like 4 months, and you can have a month off during the holiday season in the winter. So I've had the opportunity to travel the world with my family, and so yes, I mean they're part of my scholarly adventures.
Now, when you travel different world and you come back, and while you're teaching at Ivy Tech, do you inspire your students, or do you tell them what was your experience and if they should do what?
Yes, absolutely. I encourage my students to travel. I mean, working in different states in the U.S., often in small towns, but even here in a medium-sized city like Fort Wayne, we have students who've never been to Indianapolis.
Wow.
Students who've never been to Chicago. There are students who've never left their county. There are people who live in small towns in Indiana who are afraid to go to Fort Wayne. And so, what's the result of that? You end up being very, very narrow in your outlook. So I encourage them, go to Indianapolis, go to Chicago, and by all means study abroad, travel abroad. It'll definitely broaden your horizons and expand your intellect.
When you say that to the students, don't they have that curious look? It's like, okay, you're telling me to do this, do that. How can I afford to do it? Do you guide them how to, try and get some kind of a funding or help?
Yes. And I mean, they often say, well, okay, you have money. I don't have any money. And I'm a professor, seriously. And a lot of the traveling I did it as a student. I was 18 years old and I was traveling Spain and France and England and so on. Like many young people do before they start university.
I like the way you say you're a professor.
Yes, but I mean, here in the US, it's not that expensive.
No,
I mean, you can stay in a hotel for $29.99 a night and forget about that. I mean, a lot of the traveling I've done in Canada and the United States, I camp.
Bus?
Yes, you can use the bus, absolutely. There's the train. In Europe, you can get a Euro pass to use the train throughout Europe. It barely costs anything. And in Europe, I was staying in these student hostels.
Oh, wow.
Where I would pay $10 a night. I mean, who can't afford $10 a night? And in the US, you can stay in state parks, you can stay in ACOA camping, right? You can stay in your tent. So you could really get to know this country at minimal expense.
So basically you're saying where there's a will, there's a way?
Absolutely. Yes.
So you have to have that kind of a get-go thing.
And so I try to encourage my students, and I share stories of my adventures. I mean,
can you give us an example, like funny one?
Learning a language can be, boring and grammar, and they don't see the point. But after they travel abroad, I see a complete and total transformation in these students. Often they don't even want to come back. I send them away for a summer, they stay for a semester, and then they come back and they tell me they're moving abroad, they're moving to Chile, they're moving to Italy. They met someone there, they've got a girlfriend, they're engaged, and they don't want to come back to their sleepy little town, right? They've awakened to the wonders of the world, and sometimes they come back totally transformed. Their political views have changed. They have gone from one extreme to not another extreme.
So they try to teach you something, then when they come back?
No, then they all agree. They agree with me. They say, Dr. Morrow, you were right all along.
Now, when you write these books, and you've done so much of research and all, and you have your PhD in what? Can you tell me what PhD is?
Well, my PhD is in Spanish American literature.
Wow.
It's in Hispanic studies. But obviously, we study all kinds of different things. I studied medieval literature, Romance literature, Golden Age literature. I studied the Arabic influence on medieval Spanish literature, French literature. I studied Alhamiado literature, which is the literature of the Moriscos, of these cryptic Muslims after 1492 in Spain. And they produced a very interesting body of literature. It's written in Spanish, in their dialect of Spanish, but using the Arabic alphabet. And so I am, there are very few experts in that area. So yes, Islamic Spain, all of that. I acquired expertise in many areas.
Do you ever get bored?
No, I never get bored. I mean, the world is far too interesting to get bored. And I hate that, when children say, I'm bored, there's nothing to do. Hello? The world is far too interesting to get bored. If I got bored, I think I'd just shrivel up and die. I mean, there's just so much. There's so much work that needs to be done in so many areas. I can't just live under a rock. I can't sit still in the face of injustice. And so I have to speak out. So many discoveries are yet to be made. And so...
when you say injustice...
Yes,
can you elaborate?
I'm a person deeply committed to social justice.
Okay.
And that's reflected in my scholarship. Many of my books deal with indigenous issues, with Native people, and also the situation in Latin America.
Oh, wow.
Right. So I worked very closely with solidarity committees during the 80s and the 90s. Right, liberation struggles in Latin America, and also similar struggles in the Middle East and in other countries.
So you're not afraid to voice your opinion?
No, absolutely not.
Is
Come
there
what may.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, is there a backlash?
Um, is there a backlash?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I suppose there is a backlash.
You know, when
Yes.
you speak your mind, sometimes it's like when you speak your mind, they expect you not to speak again, like the silence
Oh
of the lamb.
no, you see, I'm not like that. It makes me speak out even louder, more vociferously, right?
And
That's my nature.
the personality that I'm coming across from you is you're a very straightforward person.
I am. I'm very blunt. I'm very straightforward. Perhaps that comes from my indigenous ancestry. Native people, we know only one way. It is the direct way. Okay? Yes. And, I've met with politicians from the EU and diplomats throughout Europe.
When you say politicians, can you?
Yes, I just came back from a tour of Europe where I was promoting freedom of religion, and I was talking about the covenants of the Prophet Muhammad with the Christians of the world, and dealing with all kinds of issues that are going on in Syria and Iraq and elsewhere. I tell it like it is. I've had politicians tell me, we are diplomats, we are politicians, we are not used to people talking to us this way. And I said, if I were a diplomat, I would be diplomatic, okay? But I'm not a diplomat,
You said
all
it
right?
in a beautiful
So
way.
I will just, I will present the facts to you. And you need this. Other people just sugarcoat things, and, they're always, being diplomatic and political and politically correct and so on. But sometimes, you need to give some people a slap in the face to wake up.
I like the way you. It's funny. With all the things that you're doing, the strength that you have to put it out, the books that you write, has it inspired young people, or has it inspired different people of different age?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the project that I'm working on now, I'm devoting most of my energies to, is the Covenants Initiative.
Okay.
And in which we're calling upon Muslims to abide by these covenants and treaties of protection that the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, made with different Christian communities of his time. Many of these documents have been neglected, they've been ignored, they've been suppressed, some of them were lost, but as a result of my research in the Middle East and in Europe and archives and so on, I was able to discover and rediscover these ancient covenants, which are critically important to our time. And so we've started this movement, and we have an enormous amount of followers and support, rallying Muslims around these covenants, working with Christian communities and Jewish communities and people of faith and people who have no faith in order to promote, peace and justice and harmony.
What is your cause?
Our cause is to improve relations between Christians and Muslims and to protect Christian communities in the Middle East and in parts of Africa. In Nigeria, for example, Christians are being targeted by people who profess to be Muslims but are very far removed from anything Islamic, these Boko Haram people. In Syria, these Takfiri terrorists have been targeting Christian communities, and Shiites, of course, and Sunni Muslims, of course, that goes without saying. They're trying to essentially ethnically cleanse Iraq of its Christian population and its Shiite population, and they're killing Sunni imams and so on. And so, yes, we are calling upon Muslims, the vast majority of whom are peaceful, law-abiding, family-oriented people, good, decent people, to take a stand against these extremists who represent less than 0.01% of the Muslim population, and yet they are soiling the image of Islam and, triggering a great deal of backlash against innocent Muslims.
Now, when you write all these books and do all the research and you have so much scholarship and all, and you're a professor, Are you going to remain as a professor, or you're going to venture out and do something different?
Well, if one wishes to write, often the best profession to pick is to be a professor.
Okay.
Because at most universities, the focus is on teaching, scholarship, and service. And so that's expect. It's not only encouraged, it's expected that you be active in scholarship. And so I've authored, over 100 scholarly articles. I've published more than a dozen books. I have about half a dozen books that are near completion. So, yes, I like to combine teaching, scholarship, and service. There are some professors out there that they're good at teaching, but they don't do any research. But how good can you be at teaching if you're not current with the new developments in your field? And there are some who, excel at research, but they're poor teachers. So I always try to be a well-rounded professor, penning works of scholarship and being an effective teacher in the classroom. So that's my goal. Eventually, if it's possible, I may transition entirely into scholarship because I have no shortage of energy when
I can see
when it comes to that.
Yeah, but it seems you've got so much energy. You're vibrant because you look like you're a great professor. To be in your class, it's like being in a kid with a candy jar because it looks like you make it very easy, fun loving.
Yes, I mean, yeah. Of course, we're not entertainers, but yes, yeah. You have to make it interesting for the students,
It's
right?
not boring, huh?
No, you have to mix it up. Yeah, it has to be very dynamic, and my classes are very interactive. It's not just me pontificating for 50 minutes. I engage the students. And they have to contribute. Like, for example, if I'm teaching literature, I'm not just going to lecture and lecture and lecture. I'm going to take a poem and I'm going to go through it and make sure they understand all of the vocabulary. And then we'll identify the literary devices being employed. And then we'll try to interpret it. So it's more like guided discussion. It's not just lecturing. And so if they're going a little bit astray, I will correct them. And if they're correct, then, I will praise them for that. And so they build their confidence. And so, of course I've acquired knowledge, but they also have knowledge. And, some students tell me like, wow, this is the first time we were ever taken into consideration where our opinion actually counted. And I said, well, look, okay, this is a literature class. Some of you are studying like economics. Some of you are studying, engineering in different fields, and you can contribute different perspectives to this topic. And we can all learn from one another. So that's the type of atmosphere and I try to create in my classroom.
What is your message out to the people, the world, the kids, the parents, everybody? What is your message?
Well, I would say seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. Yes, always try to improve yourself.
And what would us as a society, as a people, do to help you for your cause?
To help me for my cause?
Yes.
Well, I would encourage viewers to visit covenantsoftheprophet.com.
Okay.
On this website, there is an initiative called the Covenants Initiative, which is for Muslims and by Muslims. So if there are any viewers who are Muslims, I would encourage them to sign it and to share this information with other Muslims. So we have Christians and Jews and agnostics and people of all faiths who are working with us in order to encourage positive relations between members of different religions. Try to promote peace and harmony and goodwill. Do unto others what you would have them do unto you. This is a universal message. It's found in Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism. Every major world religion or tradition teaches this concept. It's very fundamental. We live in very dark times. Things are very nasty in parts of Africa and in the Middle East. And, I simply can't sit still in the face of all these atrocities.
As a professor, what is your message to the other fellow professors? Or someone who wants to get into teaching and teach? What is your message to them?
Well, my message to To students?
To students, people of any age who want to get into teaching or want to become professor. What is your message?
I think everyone should be a lifelong learner. We should always try to acquire knowledge to improve ourselves in any capacity, right? We shouldn't be stagnant. We shouldn't be, moss shouldn't be growing on us, right? We should be in movement. We should always be trying to improve ourselves. And so, yes, to read, it's so important. I think it's less than 2% of the population that actually reads. Not that are able to read, okay? I mean, do you read? Yes, I can read. No, that's not what I'm asking, right? Do you read, okay? Very few people read newspapers anymore.
Yes.
So read newspapers, right? Seek different opinions, because if you're going to rely on the media in this country, it's only one vision, right? Because 20, 30 years ago, there were 2,000 independent news agencies in this country. They've been consolidated into about, 3, 4 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all owned by multinational corporations presenting the same, political perspective. So, read or, consult Russia Today, consult Press TV from Iran, consult, newspapers from Cuba, Venezuela, Canada, England, okay? Broaden your horizons, get a variety of opinions before you make a judgment on any matter. So yes, keep an open mind and study.
Sitting here has broadened my vision, my mind. You have taught me a lot. Just by listening to you, you have really inspired me. And it was a great pleasure to have you, Dr. Morrow. I know you're a busy man. You have family, you're writing book, you're a professor. But to give me your time tonight was fantastic.
No, it's my pleasure and my privilege.
It was a great honor, Dr. Morrow.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, audience, for watching. Remember, everyday people are worth more than gold. Look out.